The night sky of New Seoul burned orange and red. Admiral Taeho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn, and watched his world die. Fire spread across the capital city below. Millions of people ran through the streets, screaming, crying, trying to escape the death that fell from above. Devorian warships filled the sky like a plague of metal locusts. Their weapons fired without pause. Buildings that had stood for 300 years turned to dust in seconds. Schools, hospitals, homes, nothing was safe from their attack. Taeho gripped the railing of his command deck so hard that his knuckles turned white. His hands shook, but not from fear. Pure rage burned inside his chest like a star about to explode. Admiral, his first officer, a young woman named Ji-young, spoke with a trembling voice. "We have lost contact with the surface command. The planetary shield is down. They are bombing the civilian sectors now." Taeho did not respond. He could not find words. On the main screen, he watched a Vorian cruiser fly low over the city center. Its weapons carved a line of destruction through the heart of New Seoul. The ancient temple where his grandmother had prayed every morning vanished in a flash of light. 3 days ago, everything had been different. 3 days ago, the Vorian Empire had been humanity's greatest ally in the galaxy. They had shared technology. They had traded goods. They had promised eternal friendship between their peoples. It had all been a lie. The Vorians had studied humanity for 50 years. They had learned human weaknesses. They had mapped every colony, every defense system, every military base. They had smiled and shaken hands while planning genocide. The attack came without warning. In a single hour, the Vorian fleet struck 12 human colonies at the same time. Their coordinated assault was perfect. By the time humanity understood what was happening, half their fleet was already destroyed. New Seoul was the last major colony still fighting. But fighting was a generous word for what was happening now. It was not a battle. It was slaughter. "Admiral," Ji-young shouted. "Enemy ships approaching our position. 7 heavy cruisers. They will be in weapons range in 4 minutes." Taeho finally turned away from the burning world below. His face was calm now, but his eyes held something dangerous. Something cold and patient and terrible. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked. 47 combat vessels, sir. Most are damaged. We have perhaps 15,000 crew members still alive across the fleet. 15,000. Humanity had once numbered in the billions across their colonies. Now, 15,000 remained in this sector. Taeho did not know how many survived elsewhere, if any survived at all. And civilians? How many did we evacuate before the shields fell? Ji-young checked her console. A voice cracked when she answered. 230,000, sir. Mostly women and children. They are waiting in the transport ships behind our defensive line. 230,000 souls. That was all Taeho could save from a planet of 400 million people. The weight of that number pressed down on his shoulders like a mountain. Every person he could not save was a ghost that would follow him forever. Every child who died in the fires below was a failure he would carry to his grave. But he could not save the dead. He could only protect the living. "Navigation," Taeho said, his voice steady now. "Calculate a jump to the void territories. Somewhere deep, somewhere the Vorians have never explored." His navigation officer, an older man named Dong-ho, looked up with surprise. "Sir, the void territories are unmapped. No ship has ever returned from deep exploration there. We don't know what we'll find." "Exactly," Taeho replied. "The Vorians won't follow us into the unknown. They are conquerors, not explorers. They take what is easy to take. But sir, our supplies are limited. Our ships are damaged. If we go into unknown space, if we stay here, we die." Taeho cut him off. If we run to any known system, the Vorians will hunt us down. They want humanity extinct. They will not stop until every last one of us is dead. Our only chance is to disappear." The bridge fell silent. Every officer understood what the admiral was saying. They were going to run. They were going to hide. They were going to leave billions of their people to die. But what choice did they have? Ji Young stepped closer to Tai Ho. Her eyes were red from tears she was trying not to shed. "Admiral, some of the ships are requesting permission to make a final attack run. The captains want to. They want to hurt the Vorians before the end." Taeho understood that feeling. Part of him wanted to turn his fleet around and charge into the enemy formation. Part of him wanted to die fighting, to take as many Vorians with him as possible. But that would be selfish. That would be easy. Running was harder. Living with failure was harder. Surviving to fight another day required a different kind of courage. "Tell them no," Taeho said quietly. "Tell them their lives are more valuable than their revenge. Tell them that one day we will come back. One day we will make the Vorians pay for everything they have done. But that day is not today." He walked to the center of the bridge and looked at each of his officers in turn. These men and women had served with him for years. They trusted him. They would follow him into the darkness. "I know what I am asking," Taeho continued. "I am asking you to watch your homes burn and do nothing. I am asking you to run from an enemy we hate with every fiber of our being. I am asking you to live when everything inside you wants to die fighting." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But I am also asking you to believe in something. Believe that humanity is not finished. Believe that we will survive. Believe that one day we will return to this galaxy with a fleet so powerful that the Vorians will tremble at the sight of our ships. Today, they think they have won. Today, they celebrate our destruction. Let them celebrate. Let them think we are dead and gone." Taho's voice dropped to almost a whisper, but every person on the bridge heard him clearly. "Because when we return, they will learn the true meaning of fear." The enemy cruisers were getting closer. Warning alarms began to sound across the ship. They had less than 2 minutes before the first shots would be fired. "Dong-ho," Taeho commanded. "Send the jump coordinates to all ships. Civilian transports first, then combat vessels. We leave in 90 seconds. "Yes, sir." The navigation officer's hands flew across his console. Ji Young moved to the communication station. "All ships, this is the Eternal Dawn. Prepare for emergency jump. Follow the transmitted coordinates. Do not respond, just jump." The Admiral's orders. One by one, the human ships began to disappear. Blue lights surrounded each vessel as their jump drives activated. The civilian transports went first, massive ships filled with frightened families who had lost everything. The Vorian cruisers accelerated, trying to catch the fleeing humans before they could escape. Weapons fire streaked across the void of space. 2 human destroyers exploded, their crews dying to buy seconds for others to escape. Taeho watched the casualty reports scroll across his screen. More names. More deaths. More ghosts. "Admiral, all civilian ships have jumped," Ji Young reported. "Combat vessels are going now. We are the last. Then take us out of here." The jump drive hummed to life. Through the viewport, Taeho took one last look at New Seoul. The entire planet glowed with fire now. The Vorians had won. They had destroyed humanity's greatest colony. But they had not destroyed humanity. As the blue light of the jump enveloped the eternal dawn, Taeho made a silent promise. He promised to every person who died on that burning world below. He promised to the ghost that would haunt his dreams forever. He would return. He would rebuild. And when humanity came back to face the Vorian Empire, there would be no mercy. There would be no negotiation. There would only be justice, delivered with fire and steel. The galaxy disappeared in a flash of light. The eternal dawn and its fleet of survivors plunged into the unknown darkness of the void territories. Behind them, the Vorian Empire celebrated their victory. Their emperor declared a holiday to honor the extinction of humanity. Statues were built. Songs were written. The humans were gone, forever erased from the galaxy. Or so they believed. In the darkness between stars, Admiral Taiho sat alone in his quarters. He held a small photograph, the only thing he had saved from his home. It showed his daughter, Mi Young, smiling on her 5th birthday. She had been on New Seoul when the attack came. She had been at school, learning to read when the bombs fell. Taiho pressed the photograph to his heart and let the tears finally come. He cried for his daughter. He cried for his world. He cried for everyone he had failed to save. But when the tears stopped, something harder than steel took their place. The Vorians had made a mistake. They had left survivors. They had given humanity a reason to hate them with perfect, undying hatred. One day, that mistake would cost them everything. One day, Admiral Taiho would make them pay. But for now, he had work to do. Somewhere in the void, there was a place where humanity could hide. Somewhere they could rebuild. Somewhere they could forge the weapons of their revenge. And when those weapons were ready, the galaxy would learn that humanity was not a species that died quietly. They were a species that came back. 30 years passed in the darkness between stars. The human fleet had traveled far beyond the edge of known space. They found a system that no Vorian map had ever shown. 7 rocky planets circled a dying red sun. The planets were cold and harsh, but they were safe. They were hidden. Admiral Taiho named the largest planet Hope. Some thought it was a strange name for such an ugly world. But Taiho understood something important. Hope was not about beauty. Hope was about survival. Hope was about tomorrow. The first years were the hardest. The 230,000 survivors lived in their ships while construction crews worked around the clock. They built shelters underground, away from the freezing winds that swept across the surface. They built farms inside massive domes where artificial sunlight helped crops grow. Many people died in those early years. The cold took some. Disease took others. A few simply lost the will to live. They had lost too much. Their hearts could not carry the weight of so much grief. But most survived. Most held on to hope. Hana was 12 years old when humanity fled to the void. Her mother had been an engineer on New Seoul. Her father had been a soldier who died in the first hour of the Vorian attack. Hana remembered very little about her father now. Just his smile and the sound of his laugh. She remembered the escape clearly, though. The chaos. The screaming. Her mother pushing her onto a transport ship and promising to follow. That promise was broken. Hana never saw her mother again. An old engineer named J1 found Hana crying in a corner of the transport ship. He had lost his entire family, too. Something connected them in that moment. 2 broken people who needed someone to care about. J1 raised Hana as his own daughter. He taught her everything he knew about engineering. He showed her how machines worked, how to fix broken things, how to build new things from old parts. Hana was a natural. By 15, she was designing improvements to the colony's power systems. By 18, she was leading her own engineering team. By 25, she had become the chief engineer of the entire human fleet. But Hana wanted more than just keeping the old ships running. She wanted to build something new, something better, something that could one day destroy the Vorian Empire. She spent 10 years working in secret. She studied every piece of Vorian technology humanity had captured before the fall. She found weaknesses. She found flaws. And she designed weapons to exploit them. Her masterpiece was a new class of warship called the Vengeance. It was twice as fast as any Vorian vessel. Its shields were 3 times stronger. Its weapons could cut through Vorian armor like a knife through paper. Admiral Tejo stood in the shipyard and looked at the first completed Vengeance with tears in his eyes. He was an old man now, his hair white and his face lined with age. But his spirit burned as hot as ever. "Hana," he said quietly, "you have given us a chance." Hana stood beside him. She was 42 years old now, no longer the crying child on the transport ship. Her eyes were hard, her jaw set with determination. "A chance is not enough," she replied. "We need certainty. We need a fleet so powerful that the Vorians cannot survive our attack. How many ships do you need?" 5,000 Vengeance-class warships, 50,000 support vessels, 2 million trained soldiers. Tejo smiled sadly. "We only have 300,000 people, Hana. How do you expect to build such a force? We have 30 more years to prepare. Our population grows every year. Our children train for war from the moment they can walk. And we are not the only humans left in the galaxy." This was true. Over the years, human scouts had made careful trips back into known space. They found small groups of survivors, people who had hidden on moons and asteroids, in abandoned stations and forgotten outposts. Slowly, secretly, these survivors were brought to hope. The population was now 500,000. Not enough for an army, but enough for a beginning. Captain Sung Min commanded the scout fleet. He was born on Hope, 1 year after the Great Escape. He had never seen Earth or any of the human colonies. He knew them only from stories told by the older generation, but those stories had shaped him. Every tale of Vorian cruelty, every description of burning cities and murdered families had carved hatred into his heart. Sung Min lived for one purpose: to train the generation that would bring humanity back to the galaxy. He ran the military academy on Hope. Young men and women came to him at age 16 and left at 21, as the finest soldiers humanity had ever produced. They learned how to fight in zero gravity. They learned how to pilot attack craft at impossible speeds. They learned how to kill Vorians in 100 different ways. But Sung Min also taught them something more important. He taught them why they fought. "You are not soldiers," he told every new class. "You are the children of ghosts. Your grandparents were murdered. Your homes were burned. Your people were erased from history. The galaxy has forgotten that humans ever existed." He would pause, letting the words sink in. "One day, we will remind them. One day, we will return with fire and thunder. And on that day, the Vorians will learn that some debts cannot be escaped. Some justice cannot be delayed. Some revenge must be paid in full." The young soldiers would cheer, their eyes bright with purpose. They had been raised on these words. They believed them completely. Among Sung Min's best students was a young woman named Yuna. She was the daughter of 2 survivors who had met on Hope and married. Her parents spoke rarely about the past. The memories were too painful, but Yuna understood. She understood when her mother cried at night. She understood when her father stared at the stars with empty eyes. She understood that something precious had been taken from her family, from all human families. She wanted to take something back. Yun-Ah graduated at the top of her class. She was the best pilot Sung Min had ever trained. She could fly a fighter craft through an asteroid field blindfolded. She could hit a target the size of a coin from 10 kilometers away. But more than her skills, Sung Min admired her heart. Yuna did not fight for revenge alone. She fought for justice. She fought for the future. She fought so that one day, human children could grow up without fear. "You will lead the first wave," Sung Min told her on the day of her graduation. "When we finally return, You will be the tip of the spear." Yuna saluted. "I will not fail you, sir. I know you won't. You carry the hopes of all humanity on your shoulders. Every person who died on New Sol, on Earth, on all our lost worlds. They are watching you, Yuna. Make them proud." 20 years passed. Then 25. The Hidden Fleet grew larger every year. Hana built 3,000 Vengeance-class warships and 8,000 smaller attack vessels. She designed orbital cannons that could crack a planet's crust. She created missiles that could not be stopped by any known defense. The population of Hope reached 1 million. New children were born every day. They grew up hearing stories of the lost worlds, dreaming of the day they would take them back. Admiral Tejo was 90 years old now. His body was failing, but his mind remained sharp. Every day, he watched the fleet grow stronger. Every night, he looked at the photograph of his daughter and renewed his promise. Soon, he told himself, soon, the youngest pilot in the fleet was a 17-year-old girl named Subin. She had been born on Hope, like most of her generation. She had never known anything but this cold world at the edge of space. But Subin dreamed of flying through warm skies. She dreamed of seeing oceans and forests and cities filled with life. She dreamed of a galaxy where humans were not hunted, not forgotten. "Why do we have to fight?" She asked her grandmother one day. "Why can't we just stay here, where we're safe?" Her grandmother, an old woman who had survived the fall of New Sol, took Subin's hands in her own. "Because safety is not life," she said gently. "Because we cannot let evil go unpunished. Because your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, millions of people who should have been here to love you were murdered. If we do nothing, their deaths mean nothing." Subin thought about this for a long time. "Will we win?" she asked. Her grandmother smiled. "We have spent 30 years preparing. We have built weapons the Vorians cannot imagine. We have raised soldiers who fight without fear. And we have something the Vorians will never understand." "What's that?" "Purpose. The Vorians conquered us for wealth and power. We will return for justice and honor. That difference matters. It matters more than you know." The final year of preparation began. Engineers made the last adjustments to the fleet. Soldiers ran final training exercises. Commanders studied maps of Vorian space, planning every detail of the attack. Admiral Tejo called a meeting of his senior officers. Hana was there, along with Sumin, Yuna, and 100 other leaders. They gathered in the great hall of the flagship Eternal Dawn, which still served as the fleet's command center after all these years. Tejo stood at the center of the room. He was frail now, needing a cane to walk. But his voice was strong. 30 years ago, we ran from our dying world. 30 years ago, we swore that we would return. That day has almost come. He looked around the room, meeting every pair of eyes. Some of you remember the old worlds. You remember what we lost. Others were born here, in the darkness. You know only stories. But stories are enough. Stories carry truth through generations. Stories remind us who we are. We are human. We survived when we should have died. We grew strong when we should have withered. We built an army when Emperor Vorn sat on his golden throne and smiled. Today was the most important holiday in the Vorian Empire, the Day of Purification. For 31 years, his people had celebrated the extinction of humanity. The great throne room was filled with nobles and generals and priests. They wore their finest clothes. They drank the most expensive wines. They laughed and told stories about the glorious war against the humans. "Tell us again, General Krath," a young noble called out. "Tell us about the fall of New Sol." General Krath was old now, his face scarred from battles long past. But he still stood straight and proud. He had led the fleet that destroyed humanity's greatest colony. It was a beautiful sight, Krath said, his voice carrying across the crowded room. The humans thought they were safe behind their planetary shield. They thought we were their friends. When we struck, they had no time to respond. The nobles laughed. They loved this story. They had heard it 100 times, but it never grew old. Their ships tried to run, of course, Krath continued. A few dozen escaped into the void. We sent hunters after them, but they disappeared into unexplored space. We assumed they died out there, alone in the darkness. A fitting end for such weak creatures, Emperor Vorn said. They were never worthy of the stars. The galaxy is better without them. Long live the Emperor! The crowd shouted. Long live the Vorian Empire! Vorn raised his glass of wine. He was about to give a toast when a servant rushed into the throne room. The man's face was pale with fear. He fell to his knees before the throne. Your Majesty, the servant gasped. Forgive me for interrupting, but there is something you must see. Vorn frowned. What is so important that you dare disturb my celebration? Ships, Your Majesty. Thousands of ships. They appeared from nowhere. They have surrounded the planet. The throne room fell silent. Every noble, every general, every priest stopped talking and turned to look at the servant. Surrounded the planet? Vorn repeated slowly. What ships? From which sector? We do not know, Your Majesty. Their design is unfamiliar. They are not answering our communications. They are simply waiting. General Krath stepped forward. His old eyes were sharp with concern. Show us, now. The great screens on the walls flickered to life. The images they displayed made every person in the room stop breathing. Space around the Vorian throne world was filled with warships. Not dozens, not hundreds. Thousands upon thousands of vessels filled the void in every direction. They formed a perfect sphere around the planet, blocking any escape route. The ships were sleek and dark, designed for one purpose: destruction. Their hulls were covered with weapons. Their engines glowed with barely contained power. Impossible, Krath whispered. Where did they come from? No empire has a fleet this size. Magnify the hull markings, Emperor Vorn commanded. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. The screen zoomed in on the nearest warship. On its side, painted in red letters that seemed to burn with fire, was a single word in an ancient language. What does it say? A noble asked. I cannot read that script. General Krath recognized it. He had seen that language 31 years ago, on ships he had thought destroyed forever. It says vengeance, he answered. His face had gone white as death. It is written in human. The throne room exploded with noise. Nobles screamed. Generals shouted orders. Priests fell to their knees and prayed. Silence, Emperor Vorn roared. The room fell quiet instantly. This is impossible. The humans are dead. We killed them all. Apparently not, Your Majesty, Krath said quietly. Apparently, they survived. Then we will kill them again. Summon the defense fleet. Launch all fighters. Destroy these ghosts. Your Majesty, a young officer spoke up, his voice trembling. The defense fleet has already engaged. The results are, they are not favorable. Another screen activated, showing the space battle happening above the planet. Vorian ships fired their weapons at the human fleet, but the human shields absorbed every shot. The weapons that had destroyed New Sol bounced harmlessly off the dark hulls. Then the humans fired back. Beams of white light cut through Vorian ships like they were made of paper. Missiles exploded against Vorian shields, overwhelming them in seconds. Fighters were swatted from the sky like insects. In less than 5 minutes, 100 Vorian warships were destroyed. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. What are those weapons? Krath demanded. I have never seen anything like them. Lev never seen anything like them. No one had an answer. Emperor Vorn watched his fleet die. He watched his empire's greatest warriors fall without even damaging the enemy. He watched everything he believed about Vorian superiority crumble to dust. Your Majesty, the communications officer called out. We are receiving a transmission. It is coming from the human flagship. Show me. The main screen flickered and a face appeared. It was an old human man with white hair and deep lines carved by decades of pain. He sat in a command chair, surrounded by officers in dark uniforms. Emperor Vorn recognized that face. He had seen it in the archives, in the old records of the human war. This was the man who had escaped New Sol, the one who had led the survivors into the void. Admiral Teho, Vorn said, you are supposed to be dead. As you can see, Emperor, reports of humanity's extinction were greatly exaggerated. Teho's voice was calm, almost peaceful. We have been waiting for this day for 31 years. What do you want? Surrender? We can negotiate. We can give you a sector of space, a planet to call your own. We do not want a planet. Teho cut him off. We do not want a sector. We want nothing you can give us. Then why are you here? Teho leaned forward, and his calm mask slipped for just a moment. Behind it was something terrible. Something that had been burning for 31 years. We are here for justice, Emperor. We are here to collect a debt that your people owe. We are here to remind the galaxy what happens when you try to destroy humanity. This is madness. We can fight. We have allies. The entire galaxy will unite against you. No, they will not. Teho smiled, and it was not a kind smile. I have spent 30 years studying galactic politics. Your empire has no friends. You have conquered and bullied every species within your reach. When we destroy you, the galaxy will celebrate. Emperor Vorn felt fear for the first time in his long life. He had always been the strongest. His empire had always been supreme. But now, looking at the old human's face, he understood that strength could be temporary. What do you want from us? Vorn asked again, his voice smaller now. I want you to understand something before the end. I want you to know why this is happening. Teho pressed a button, and new images appeared on the screen. They showed the fall of New Sol, but not the Vorian version. This was humanity's record. It showed children screaming as bombs fell. It showed hospitals full of wounded people being incinerated. It showed families running for transport ships, only to be cut down by Vorian fighters. 400 million people died that day, Teho said. 400 million innocent lives ended because your empire wanted to steal our resources. You did not wage war against soldiers. You murdered civilians. You burned children. You erased an entire people from existence. That was war, Vorn protested. Casualties are inevitable in war. No, that was genocide. And genocide has consequences. On the screens, the human fleet began to move. Thousands of ships adjusted their positions, forming attack patterns. Weapon systems powered up, their energy signatures visible even from the planet's surface. You have 1 hour, Teho said. Use that time to evacuate your civilians if you wish. We have no desire to kill innocents. Children, families, anyone who does not fight, they may leave. We will let them pass. And then? And then we will destroy every military target on your planet. Every shipyard. Every weapons factory. Every barracks and fortress and palace. When we are finished, your empire will have no ability to wage war. You cannot do this. You will make enemies of the entire galaxy. The galaxy has already made an enemy of us. You made sure of that 31 years ago. Teho's voice hardened. 1 hour, Emperor. Use it wisely. The transmission ended. Emperor Vorn sat on his throne, surrounded by terrified nobles and helpless generals. For the first time in Vorian history, the supreme ruler of the galaxy had no power. No options, no hope. What do we do? General Krath asked. Vorn did not answer. He stared at the screens, watching the human fleet move with perfect precision. Each ship knew exactly where to go, exactly what to target. This was not an angry mob seeking revenge. This was a surgical strike planned over decades. The humans had not just survived. They had learned. They had grown. They had become something far more dangerous than the peaceful traitors the Vorians had betrayed. They had become Avengers. 1 hour passed quickly. Civilian transports fled from the planet, carrying millions of Vorians to safety. The human fleet let them go, just as Teho had promised. Then the attack began. White beams of light rained down from the sky. Military installations that had stood for centuries were vaporized in seconds. Shipyards where the mightiest Vorian warships were built exploded into clouds of metal and fire. The planetary defense grid tried to respond. Cannons fired. Shields activated. Fighters lowered nothing boo. Commander Yuna flew through fire and death. Her fighter craft twisted and rolled through the burning wreckage of what had once been the largest military station in Vorian space. Behind her, her squadron followed in perfect formation. 3 months had passed since the attack on the throne world. In that time, the human fleet had swept across Vorian space like a storm of vengeance. Military bases fell. Shipyards burned. Fleets that had conquered entire sectors were reduced to floating debris. The Vorians had tried to fight back. They gathered their remaining forces and launched counterattacks. They called on their allies for help. They begged, they threatened, they offered anything for peace. Nothing worked. The human fleet was unstoppable. Every ship that Hana had built performed beyond expectations. Every soldier that Sumin had trained fought without hesitation. Every pilot that Yuna led flew as if death meant nothing, because to them, it did not dot they were the children of genocide. They had grown up knowing that the universe wanted them dead. They had trained their entire lives for this moment. Fear had no place in their hearts. Only purpose. Commander, her wingman called out. Enemy reinforcements jumping in. 12 cruisers, bearing 045. Yuna checked their scanner. The Vorian ships were old models, probably pulled from reserve fleets. They were no match for human technology, but they still had weapons. They could still kill. All squadrons, break and engage. Focus on the lead cruiser. Take out their command ship, and the rest will scatter. Her pilots acknowledged the order. 30 human fighters turned toward the Vorian fleet like arrows fired from a bow. Yundash pushed her throttle to maximum. Her craft accelerated so fast that the stars blurred around her. G-forces pressed against her body, but she had trained in worse conditions. Her hands stayed steady on the controls. The Vorian cruisers opened fire. Beams of red energy streaked through space, trying to catch the small human fighters. But the fighters were too fast, too nimble. They danced between the enemy shots like leaves in the wind. Yundash lined up her target. The lead cruiser's bridge was visible through her targeting computer. One shot would end the battle before it truly began. She pressed the trigger. A beam of white light lanced from her fighter. It struck the cruiser's shield, overloaded it in a millisecond, and continued through. The bridge exploded in a flash of blue fire. The cruiser began to spin, dead in space. Just as she had predicted, the remaining Vorian ships lost their coordination. Without orders from their command ship, they fell into confusion. Some tried to flee. Others fired wildly at targets they could not hit. Her squadron finished them in less than 10 minutes. All targets destroyed, Yuna reported.
No losses on our side.
Returning to the fleet, Admiral Tejo's voice came through her communicator. It was weaker now than it had been at the start of the campaign. The old man was fading.
Excellent work, Commander.
Return to the Eternal Dawn. We have a new mission for you. Yuna turned her fighter toward the flagship. As she flew, she looked at the destruction around her. Vorian stations burned. Vorian ships drifted lifeless. Vorian bodies floated in the void. She felt nothing. Some of her younger pilots struggled with this. They had grown up on hope, dreaming of justice. Now they were delivering it, and they found that justice looked a lot like slaughter. Some had nightmares. Some cried when they thought no one was watching. Yundash did not judge them. She understood. War was ugly, even righteous war. The Vorians were evil, but they were still living beings. Taking their lives should never be easy, but it was necessary. Every Vorian soldier who died today was a soldier who would never kill human children. Every Vorian ship destroyed was a ship that would never bomb human cities. This was not murder. This was prevention. She landed her fighter in the Eternal Dawn's hangar bay. Maintenance crews swarmed around her craft, checking for damage and preparing it for the next mission. Captain Sung Min was waiting for her. The Admiral wants to see us, he said. His face was serious. Something important has happened. They walked through the corridors of the flagship together. Sung Min had aged during the campaign. His hair was grayer now, his face more lined. But his eyes still burned with the same fire that had driven him to train thousands of soldiers. Do you know what this is about? Yuna asked. Emperor Vorn has requested a meeting. He wants to discuss surrender. Yuna stopped walking. Surrender. The word felt strange in her ears. For months, she had thought of nothing but fighting. The idea that the war might end had not seemed real. Does the Admiral trust this request? No, but he is willing to hear what Vorn has to say. We are not monsters, Yuna. If the Vorians genuinely surrender, we must give them that chance. They continued to the command deck. Admiral Tejo was there, seated in his command chair. He looked very old now, very tired. But his eyes were sharp. Ha-Na stood beside him, along with several other senior officers. They were all looking at the main screen, which showed the face of Emperor Vorn. The Vorian ruler had changed since their last conversation. His proud bearing was gone. His fine clothes were torn and dirty. His eyes held the hollow look of a man who had lost everything. Admiral Tejo, Vorn said. His voice cracked. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. I am listening, Emperor. Say what you have to say. Vorn swallowed hard. I wish to surrender. The Vorian Empire cannot continue this fight. We have lost too much. Our military is destroyed. Our people are starving because supply lines have been cut. If this war continues, my entire species will be exterminated. And why should that concern me? Tejo asked quietly. You tried to exterminate my species. You very nearly succeeded. I know. I know what we did was wrong. I understand now why you hate us. But please, Admiral, consider mercy. There are billions of innocent Vorians who had nothing to do with the attacks on humanity. Children who were not even born when the war began. Will you condemn them to death for the sins of their ancestors? Tejo was silent for a long moment. Every person on the command deck held their breath. I have considered mercy, Tejo finally said. I considered it every night for 31 years. When I saw my daughter's face in my dreams, I considered mercy. When I buried friends who died of broken hearts in the void, I considered mercy. When I watched young soldiers fly to battle, knowing they might not return, I considered mercy. He leaned forward in his chair. And do you know what I concluded, Emperor?
Mercy is not something you deserve. Mercy is not something you can demand. Mercy is a gift, freely given. You never showed mercy to my people. Why should I show it to yours? Vorn's face crumpled. Please, I'm begging you. I will give you anything. My throne, my wealth, my life. Take whatever you want, but spare my people. You still do not understand. Taeho shook his head slowly. We do not want your throne, or your wealth, or your life. We want only one thing, to ensure that what you did to us can never happen again. I can promise that. I can swear oaths. Oaths are worthless. You swore friendship with humanity for 50 years before you attacked us. Your promises mean nothing. Vorn fell to his knees. Tears ran down his face. The ruler of the mightiest empire in the galaxy knelt before a screen, weeping like a child. Then what can I do? What can I possibly do to make this right? Taeho looked at the broken emperor for a long time. Then he spoke, and his voice was cold as the void between stars. You can watch. You can watch as we tear down everything your empire built. You can watch as your shipyards become rubble and your weapons become dust. You can watch as the galaxy learns that the Varian Empire is nothing but a memory. And then, Vorn whispered, and then we leave. We take your military capability, and we leave your people in peace. We are not like you, Emperor. We do not murder civilians. We do not burn schools. We do not commit genocide. We are better than you. And that is why you lost. Vorn stared at the screen, unable to speak. Yun-Ah watched this exchange with complex feelings. Part of her wanted Taeho to show no mercy at all. Part of her wanted the Vorians to suffer as humanity had suffered. Part of her wanted revenge so complete that no Vorian would ever forget. But another part of her, the part that dreamed of a future worth living, was glad that Taeho had chosen this path. Killing soldiers was necessary. Destroying military targets was necessary. But exterminating an entire species would make humanity as evil as their enemies. They had to be better. Otherwise, what was the point? There's one more thing, Taeho said. I want the names of every officer involved in the attack on New Seoul. I want every general and admiral who ordered the bombardment of civilian areas. I want every captain who fired on refugee ships. Vorn looked up, confused. Why? Because they will face justice. Not genocide, not collective punishment, individual justice. Each person responsible for war crimes will answer for their actions. That is how civilized beings handle such matters. For a moment, something like hope flickered in Vorn's eyes. You will not punish the innocent? No, we will punish the guilty. Every single one of them. Vorn nodded slowly. I will provide the names. I will give you everything you need. Good. The human fleet will continue operations until all military targets are neutralized. Once that is complete, we will discuss permanent peace terms. The transmission ended. Taeho sagged in his chair. The effort of that conversation had drained him. Hana moved to his side, concerno. The Vorian Empire fell in 7 days. After the destruction of the Imperial War Academy, what remained of Vorian resistance collapsed. Military governors surrendered their systems one after another. Fleet commanders powered down their weapons and transmitted offers of peace. The war that had lasted 31 years ended not with a final great battle, but with a long sigh of exhaustion. Admiral Taeho lived to see it. He watched from his hospital bed as reports came in from across Vorian space. Every military target destroyed. Every war criminal captured. Every shipyard reduced to rubble. We did it, Hana said softly, sitting beside him. The Empire cannot wage war anymore. They have nothing left to fight with. Taeho nodded weakly. His body was shutting down, one organ at a time. The doctor said he had hours left, maybe less. But his eyes were peaceful. "Tell me about the peace terms," he whispered. "We have agreed to let the Vorians keep their homeworlds. They can govern themselves, trade with other species, live normal lives. But they are forbidden from building warships. Any military production will be considered an act of war. And the war criminals? 112 officers have been identified. They will face trial before a galactic court. If found guilty, they will spend the rest of their lives in prison." Teho closed his eyes. "Good. Not execution. Prison. We must be better than them, Hana. Always better." "I understand, Admiral. Where is Subin?" Hana checked her communicator. "She's preparing for the final ceremony. She will plant our flag on the Vorian capital today." A small smile crossed Teho's face. Subin, the youngest pilot in the fleet. Born on hope, raised in exile, fighting a war for a home she had never seen. She represented everything humanity had become. Strong, determined, hopeful despite everything. "I wish I could be there," Teho murmured. "You will be there, Admiral. We are broadcasting the ceremony to every ship in the fleet. Every human in the galaxy will watch, including you." They activated a screen beside his bed. It showed the Vorian capital city, not in ruins, but intact. Humanity had kept its promise. They had destroyed military targets only. Civilian areas remained untouched. The streets were empty now. Vorian citizens had been told to stay indoors during the ceremony. They watched from windows, afraid and uncertain about what would happen next. A single human shuttle descended from the sky. It landed in the great plaza at the center of the city, where the imperial palace rose like a mountain of gold and crystal. Once, this palace had been the seat of power for an empire that ruled half the galaxy. Now it was just a building, empty of authority. The shuttle door opened, and Subin stepped out. She was 18 years old, small for her age, with short black hair and eyes that seemed too old for her young face. She wore the uniform of a human pilot, dark blue with silver trim, and she carried a flag. Folded carefully in her arms, Yundash had been chosen for the previous ceremony, planting the flag on the War Academy ruins. But Teho had insisted that Subin perform this final act. "Youth should plant the seeds of the future," he said. "The young should inherit what the old had won." Subin walked across the empty plaza. Her footsteps echoed against the ancient stones. Cameras from 1,000 human ships followed her every move, broadcasting to a species that had thought itself extinct. She climbed the steps of the imperial palace. At the top, where Emperor Vorn had once given speeches to cheering crowds, she stopped and turned to face the sky. "My name is Subin," she said. Her voice was steady, amplified by her communicator to reach every human ear in the galaxy. "I was born on a world called Hope, in a system with no name in the darkness between stars. I never saw Earth. I never walked on New Sol. I never knew the worlds that my ancestors called home. I know them only from stories of blue oceans and green forests, of cities full of light and laughter, of a time when humanity lived without fear. Those worlds were taken from us. Our people were murdered. Our history was burned. The Vorian Empire tried to erase us from existence." She paused, letting her words settle. "They failed. For 31 years, we survived in the darkness. We built ships and trained soldiers. We kept our stories alive. We never forgot who we were or what had been done to us. And now we stand here in the heart of the empire that tried to destroy us. We stand here as victors, not victims. We stand here to tell the galaxy that humanity cannot be erased." Subin unfolded the flag, the same design that Yuna had planted on the Academy ruins. Blue and green, with a golden sun at its center. The colors of a home that now existed only in memory. This flag represents more than a planet. It represents a people. a people who survived genocide, a people who rebuilt from nothing, a people who refused to die. We do not plant this flag as conquerors. We do not want to rule the Vorian people. We do not seek revenge through endless oppression. We plant this flag as a promise that humanity will always survive, a promise that we will protect the innocent and punish the guilty, a promise that we will build a future where no species needs to fear extinction at the hands of another. She attached the flag to the pole that had once held the Vorian imperial banner. As she raised it, the fabric caught the wind and began to fly. This is our new dawn, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. The old order is gone. The empire of conquest and genocide is finished. In its place, we will build something better. We will build it together. The flag flew high above the Vorian capital. Throughout the galaxy, humans watched and wept. They had survived. They had won. They had earned a place among the stars. In his hospital bed aboard the Eternal Dawn, Admiral Tejo smiled. She did well, he whispered. Hana nodded, tears streaming down her face. She did, Admiral. She did perfectly. Tejo reached for something beside his bed. It was a photograph, old and worn, carried for 31 years through exile and war. A little girl smiled up from the image, frozen forever at 5 years old. "Me young," Tejo murmured, speaking to his daughter's ghost. "I did what I promised. I brought our people home. I gave them a future." His eyes closed slowly. "Now I can rest." Hana held his hand as his breathing slowed. She held it until it stopped entirely. She held it as the monitors flatlined and the doctors quietly confirmed what everyone already knew. Admiral Tejo, the man who had saved humanity, was gone. The news spread across the fleet within minutes. Flags were lowered to half-mast. Soldiers stood at attention. Pilots whispered prayers in cockpits high above alien worlds. Captain Sung Min was giving a training lecture when he heard. He stopped speaking mid-sentence, closed his eyes, and stood in silence for a long moment. Then he finished his lecture. The Admiral would have wanted him to finish. Commander Yuna was patrolling the outer systems when the message reached her. She landed her fighter on an empty asteroid and sat alone for an hour, remembering the old man who had given her purpose. Subin was still on the palace steps when she learned. She looked up at the flag she had just planted and felt the weight of it settle on her young shoulders. The old generation was passing. The new generation had to carry on. The funeral was held 3 days later, aboard the Eternal Dawn. Humanity had no planet to bury their dead, no sacred ground to return them to. Instead, they gave Tejo to the stars. His body was placed in a small capsule, along with the photograph of his daughter that he had carried for so long. The capsule was launched toward the nearest sun, where it would burn bright for a moment before becoming one with the light. Hana gave the eulogy. "Tejo was not born a warrior," she said. "He was an administrator, a planner, a man who preferred peace to violence. When the Vorians attacked, he was the wrong person to lead our people to safety. He was too kind, too gentle, too trusting. But he became the right person. He became what we needed him to be. He took his kindness and turned it into compassion. He took his gentleness and turned it into wisdom. He took his trust, broken so completely by the Vorians, and rebuilt it into something stronger: faith in humanity. He never let hate consume him. Even as he planned the destruction of the Vorian military, he insisted that we spare civilians. Even as he watched our enemies burn, he demanded that we remain better than them. That was his greatest gift to us. Not the fleet he built or the war he won. His greatest gift was showing us that we could survive without becoming monsters, that we could seek justice without losing our souls. Now he is gone, but his gift remains. It is up to us to honor it." The capsule entered the sun's corona and disappeared in a flash of golden light. For a moment, A new star seemed to appear in the sky, bright and fierce and beautiful. Then it was gone, and only the memory remained. Life continued. The human fleet did not disband after the war. Instead, it transformed into something new, a peacekeeping force that patrolled the galaxy, protecting the weak and punishing aggressors. Hana became the fleet's chief engineer until her retirement. She spent her final years writing books about the technology she had developed, ensuring that her knowledge would survive for future generations. Sungmin continued training soldiers, though the training changed. Instead of preparing for revenge, his students learned to protect and defend. The war was over, but the galaxy was still dangerous. Humanity needed defenders, not Avengers. Yoon rose to become the fleet's supreme commander, taking the position that Taeho had once held. She was AF,